harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zimet.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Beverly Zimet Show, where being the best you has just gotten easier. And my guest today is going to prove that again, as everyone does. Her name is Jocelyn Bellows, and she's calling in from Highlands Ranch, which is just outside of Denver, Colorado. Welcome to the show.
Beverly, thank you so much for having me. I know this is, I think, the third or fourth time we tried to schedule to make this happen. So excited to be here.
Well, then it better happen.
Snowy Wednesday in Colorado in September.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Oh my gosh, Sunday was like 100 degrees. And here it is now. It's snowing. It's like, oh my gosh.
And I have like 2 sweaters on and drinking my tea. So if y'all see it, I don't know if
I got my hot chocolate.
Staying warm.
Oh my gosh. It's like it's too early to turn the furnace on. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh God.
Oh, I flat out contemplated starting a fire last night. I was like,
I know. But wow. Well, I know, Montana, Wyoming, they're getting all kinds of snow. I have friends up in those neck of the woods too, and they're really getting hammered. It's like, I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm used to, I have not spent a time in snow for a lot of years, let's put it that way. So, I know with this whole upside down world right now, I don't know if I'm prepared for this.
It's 2020.
So...
Yeah.
Well, Jocelyn, you told me you just created that beautiful artwork behind you. So obviously you are an artist.
You know what? It's not, I don't know that I'd go that far as to say that I'm an artist, at least not in a painting fashion. This actually was a result. I have a coach that I work with, life coach, and we were going through a session the other day, and I brought up when I was a teenager that I had 2 murals on my walls. In fact, so I did my first one, and then at some point I decided I wanted to change it, so I white walled it and did it again. And as we were kind of working through some things that were associated with that, I said, "Why don't you just do that now? Because it clearly brings you joy." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess."
So here's my wall now, right?
Myself to do it. And so I got, so this is my weekend project. And in fact, the tree behind me, I have a 6-year-old son. My son actually painted the tree.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, that was his, I mean, he did more than that, but that was actually his contribution, 100%. So, yeah. But I'm actually a Break Up to Wake Up coach and a podcast host myself.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to be adding to that very soon, author. I'm working on my first book. Hence the reason I was in with my coach, because I'm going through I'm writing some pretty deep things for myself and revisiting some of my own journey. And it's just bringing up new stuff for me to look at, new stuff for me to heal with. So.
Oh, that's amazing. You know, and that I think rings true to every author out there, you know, is you begin writing your story, you begin speaking that story, and it creates that healing that is so needed. I mean, oh my goodness, and especially with the world turned upside down like it is, you know, healing is something that is kind of almost was forced on us, so to speak. So it's because we have all this excess time with ourselves. What are we going to do with it? You know, this pendulum is swinging like from one extreme to the other, you know, but it really is a time to set back and take a look at what's going on internally. I know my journey started way back in 1974. And there wasn't anybody around then to do any kind of assistance, right? And especially I grew up in the Midwest on a farm, So there wasn't a whole lot of anything back there, I'm telling you. So take advantage of what's here today because it makes life easier. But again, that story is what makes you who you are, right? And all the little pieces. And when you can begin to recognize that, oh my goodness, that piece really isn't serving me to the best of my, ability here. What am I doing dragging that garbage around? That's just holding me back, right? It's out with this crap, And, so I've got several books on the market. And in the one book, The Power Formula, I did share my story, how it started on my journey, and everything that was in it. Working through the subconscious and the higher consciousness, and how it impacted my life, and how my expression was, and how I came to be where I am here today in the holistic medicine, and how it impacts other people's lives. And I actually created a formula, a 5-step formula to help, just as what you're saying, to recognize and delete what no longer serves purpose. It's actually removing the fuel that's feeding the story that no longer serves the purpose, right? So when you can recognize that Houston has an issue, you can acknowledge that that issue was the truth at the time you created it, which then surrenders the subconscious to not want to fight to be right. And then you can release it, the emotional attachment to it. And then you can replace it with the new values, the new truths, and the new direction you want to go. And work with that subconscious in that connectedness instead of in the conflict. And then you can embrace that as your new truth. And wow, and again, we don't need to, oh my gosh, back in the day, there was nothing more but psychology or psychiatrist, right? And you had to just regurgitate everything, right? And then they would say, okay, here it is, take it home, eat it, digest it, come back and puke it up again next week. It's like, really?
Yeah.
There's more to life than this, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also when you start to repeat the story, you're almost re-inflicting more.
Well,
if
you are.
Repeat the story without healing, you're actually inflicting more damage, right? The healing is the part. I think you said that so well. Is you started with the baggage that we're carrying of our journeys that that aren't helping us. In fact, they're heavy and they're holding us back. It's limiting us from our growth potential. And getting down to the root of the stories of why. And the roots of those stories have always been.
Well, everything is
your childhood. It all happened in childhood.
It did. Because nobody told us anything about it. Well, they couldn't tell us because I didn't know either, right?
Well, it's interesting. I say that they don't. I don't know that I agree with you. They didn't know. It's for so long. I mean, you've been on your journey far longer than I have. Mine really started just three years ago. When I filed for divorce and I hit my lowest of lows. My breakup to wake up was literally my breakup. And to wake up to the person, who is Jocelyn? What makes her happy? What makes her tick? What does she want today? How is she going to love herself? Those are things I didn't know. Now I look back at my parents and they did the best they could with what they had.
They did with what they knew.
Yeah.
Right.
But they didn't, it's interesting now being that I'm on the other side on the
Yeah, because you've got a little one. Yeah,
as is my sister, and now bringing our parents into that conversation. My father's not terribly interested, but my mom is starting to say, oh, some of these elements that we're talking about now, she's like, oh, I've had hints of these all my life. So she's had these intuitive hits, but she wasn't equipped with the tools that both my sister and I have. And they did the best they could. And what they got was from the tools from they got from their parents. So we're taking generational things that probably never worked and keep passing that forward. And then I have a 6-year-old son who started at 3 years old, 3.5, saying to me, Mommy, I know everything. And of course, that's what a little kid says. However, I believe that's the truth. He does. He hasn't been conditioned to believe otherwise. Well,
Yeah.
he has now. He's 6.
Right.
So there's got to be some things that we've taught him and unlearned things.
Right.
But he has this ability that others that I unlearned through
Right.
life.
Oh, these little ones coming in today are so much more advanced. The technology for one thing, but just with the knowledge, they haven't shut down. When we came into this meat machine, skin box, whatever you want to call it, right? It was like, okay, we left everything, the knowledge of the divine, and the spirit behind as an adventure to seek through it, right? Well, they're coming in with more of that in alignment, and I'm watching it. I mean, I've watched my grandkids grow up, and now I'm watching my great grandbabies grow up, and they're all the way from age 3 up and to one's going to be 12 here Saturday, right? And the other one is 14. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm watching these kids coming up today, and I got nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews of all different ages and sizes. I've been a people watcher. It's interesting to see how things shift. But again, being on the end where I'm at, it's really these wisdom years, because we have learned so much, but it's going in with an open mind. And when we look at the things that we've digested, that we've put in as a safety net and stored in our cell memory as children growing up, because it was our way to, and I hate this word, but that's all you ever hear, deal with it, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of cut and paste. Well, the thing is as the older you get, you talk with other children. Now you're talking with other adults. You're reading stories, you're watching movies, you're hearing other conversations, things that trigger things in your childhood. You're bringing database of information that influences experiences that you had, that add fuel to the fire, to your fire. So your story that was like this becomes this, right? And it's like, oh my gosh. So 95% of the crap that you are automatically responding to from your cell memory isn't even yours, right? And because we do cut and paste to help deal with it, to help exist alongside of it, never comes back in full capacity. And I've got 10 siblings, and this is hilarious.
Wow.
When we start listening to stories, throughout the childhood, there's times, still today, when someone will bring something up that happened, back then, it's like, are you sure we were at the same event?
Yeah.
Are you sure we're from the same gene pool here? Because it's totally irrelevant. And again, it just goes to show how someone interprets an event or an activity different. So here we have all these siblings, every single one of us having a different story from the same event. I mean, we get together as family reunions, 11 of us, we still get together, and we've always gotten together year after year after year after year. And talking about something that happened 20 years ago when we got together and had this reunion, right? Is still like, are you sure you were at the same place? It didn't happen like that. Yes, it did. Right? So we all interpret with the database of information.
We all have our own way of.
And we all have our own database of information and how we interpret and how we respond. So it's action, reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it is very interesting. It is a very personal journey. And you really hit the nail on the head when you started talking, with your journey and everything. It is a personal adventure. And you never know what you're going to find. Right?
No, and that has come up even more, especially with this year, the year of COVID, and people really, there's been this overwhelming concern of, I don't know what's next, and that fear around that. But here's the thing, we never knew.
No, we didn't. That is so key.
That didn't change because Corona appeared. It may have felt stranger and more larger, right? Because I think we got used to, by and large, got used to sort of the way of life.
Well, life was busy and it just kept on going no matter what. So we didn't have to think about not knowing what was going to happen next because it was just going to happen, right? So, but again, sharing your story and the words that you said in the very beginning here is you did not know who Jocelyn was, right? And I think everyone has that same thought, whether they speak it or not. I started on my journey because I had lost my identity. When I got married, that first 4 years in that marriage isolated me to the point of zero identity for someone who was a rebel and knew what she wanted and where she wanted to go. All of a sudden, my identity was associated with nothing more than you're married to so-and-so. You're so-and-so's mom. Oh, yeah, you're the person that writes for the newspaper. Oh, you're right. And it's like, wait a minute, who am I, right? And so
I can identify with that a lot.
Right. And so everyone's journey goes to that beginning of identity. And that's where I kind of took my work, I guess you would say, with me in that journey is helping people become their own self-discovery archaeologists by being that identity revelation specialist coaching type of, whatever, and to be able to begin to recognize those things because it is about your identity and it's between you and you.
Yeah.
Right? And when you can learn to exist and to live in yourself and be friends with yourself. I travel. I've been traveling since 97, right? Never look back. Always on the go, right? And people say, it's like, you go by yourself all the time? I said, no, actually, there's 3 of us. It's me, myself, and I, and we're very content.
Uh-huh.
So when you can reach that point of existing with those 3 parts of you, you'll conquer anything.
Yeah.
Has it always been easy? No. Has it always been simple? Yes. Did it always taste good? No. Right? So, yeah.
No, and it's interesting. So I was introduced to the Indigo Girls. They're a folk rock group. They've been around for, I don't even know, 30 years plus. Yeah. I was introduced to them in college, or maybe even high school. And I didn't understand the impact of their words then. And I recently started listening to them again, and they have a song called "Least Complicated." And one of the lines, in the verse is, "The hardest to learn are the least complicated." And I so feel that way about our relationship with ourselves. Is we don't, no one taught us how to have a relationship with ourselves. That was not not something first of all, it was not a subject we learned in school, right? By any stretch. And it was not something we ever learned. It wasn't taught. Someone asked me that. Actually, the question was, what were you taught? Yeah, what were you taught about loving yourself? Not a relationship with
nothing.
And honest to goodness, I heard this question, and I just broke down, just tears rolling down. Nothing. And then I had to think about that, and then I reflected and said, "Oh, well, maybe it was around how I watched my parents interact with themselves and interact with each other. Right. It was by actions, not by it wasn't by words or by teaching, it was by actions. And that's also a way of learning, right? It's not,
it's a very impactful way of learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to think about that, and I had to, reflect on that, because I was like, I don't think we've ever had that conversation. It was always like, I mean, the conversations I've always had have been, I know that I'm extremely hard on myself, more so than, and I have people telling me that all the time. They see it from the outside, how hard I am on me versus how they can be on themselves. And that's about the extent of it. So it's now shifted to, how do I love myself? And that comes in forms of eating well and getting proper sleep and resting and relaxing and editing the people in my life, being cognizant of the messages that come through, being cognizant of the people that I surround myself with, conversations that I have, the media that I just choose to imbibe versus the media I choose to turn off. But these days, mostly it's turned off. But it's those are things of how I get to choose to love myself every day.
And that is so important. Again, it's like when that word self, that 4-letter word self, right? Whoever added that ish on the end of it should have been slapped silly, because that's what you heard. Don't be selfish. Share. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. Well, what does that teach us? It teaches us to deny the self. Anything, whether it's a reward, whether it's a recognition, it doesn't matter, right? It's don't be selfish. When really it's all about being the self. Is you cannot give out of yourself more than what you give into yourself. So when people say, and you've probably used this because you're a parent, right? Because I know I've used it. It's like, oh man, I love my kids more than I love myself. Well, now that's one of the biggest lies there is, right?
And I will tell you that I don't.
So
I won't say that. I love my child dearly.
Yeah.
But I remember going back to when I decided to end my marriage, because I was lost.
Yeah.
I was lost. And in a lot of ways I was lost because I never really had that strong relationship with myself. And so I went into that relationship not whole and not complete.
And it's interesting that you say that, going into that relationship not whole and not complete is, I think we find as women, we find that happening a lot. I went into my relationship because my mom told me that I didn't have to get married, right? And it's like, what? You
did or did not?
I did not. I had, I like I said, I was a rebel, right? And my mom and I had gotten in this big argument. I mean, really big argument, right? And I left. Now, I was 21 when I had my first kid. I had been working in Des Moines, and I just came home for a weekend, and I left, and I went and spent the night with the guy I was dating. First time I had sex, I was pregnant. And I knew. It was interesting. I knew as soon as it was over. But it took me a long time. I was, 5 months along or so, 6 months before I even said anything, right? And so it's like, okay, and that was my mom's response. And I was like, you can't tell me what to do. Seriously? I'm not kidding you. And then I had sex 2 more times, and I had 2 more kids. I said, you know what? This is starting to look like my mom. Now, my mom wanted a dozen kids, right?
Right.
And me, not so much, right? I'm like,
yeah.
I've got 3 here, and I'm not sure I really wanted those 3, but I got them, right? And I love them dearly. But it was like that was a big wake-up call. And that was also that part of that identity, losing that identity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you didn't have yourself.
No. And I thought I did, because I was, but I was responding because I didn't want someone telling me what to do. And now it's like, who am I? And oh God, I had so much anger. So much anger. And that's what I had to do to get that anger out. But my kids ended up being my saving grace, and getting a divorce in the 70s was not like getting a divorce in today's world, I'll guarantee you that one. And especially from a whole Catholic setting. I spent 12 years in parochial school, right? Oh my goodness, what is this little girl doing, right? So, and at that point, I really didn't care what anybody else thought. This was about me, and I was taking it on, right? But again, over the years, you learn it is about the self. And it's not being selfish. It's understanding and developing the self. So that now when you say, hey, I can say, I love my kids 100% because I love myself 100%.
Yeah.
Right? But back then, it was, hey, you don't know what you don't know, right? And I had to make them more than I made myself to find myself through them. And we were in this together. And it was a hard conversation to have, to say, hey, we are leaving, I left Iowa, little small community, moved to Denver, Colorado, right? You talk about extremes, right? And then getting a divorce and starting life all over. It was an interesting ride, but it's made them stronger, and it's made me stronger. And they don't look back, because again, and it's that open lines of communication, and I think that's more relevant than anything. Open up the lines of communication to yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I think we're seeing so much. I mean, given this, especially this year more than any, because if we've been asked to slow down. I mean, we were not asked. COVID said you're slowing down.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and you're going to take you're going to do whatever you're going to do.
Right.
This busyness isn't serving. And busyness, and that was something I think I had to learn. Like, I moved out here 3 years ago, and going back in my 20s, I lived and worked in New York City.
Okay.
And I was running. I was constantly running. I was running from work to out with friends to home to sleep to do it all over again the next day. I was on this treadmill of life, and and at that time, I don't think I would have necessarily defined it that way. I think I loved a lot about my life and the perspective. I had a big social life, and I had a career that I loved, and there was a lot of wonderful things, but there was also that really dark side of when things slowed down. When I remember saying to my parents, I hated having half an hour to myself. I hated it. And God forbid, and I had a day that I had no plans. And there were days that I just, was miserable because I had nothing to do, and I didn't want to spend time with myself because I didn't like myself.
Well, you didn't even know yourself. That's
I know myself.
Yeah.
And then I started to reflect back, and when I accepted it just for what it was, rather than being resentful about not having, and accepting the space for what it was, what ended up happening, I had some really glorious days alone. I started to learn how to have that relationship with myself, and it's still a learning process.
And you know what? It's going to continue every single day on your journey.
I had that reflection.
Yeah,
I had that reflection. I went to the grocery store with this holiday weekend, and I was just went to grab a couple things, and saw a few elderly individuals, not couples, but individuals.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, what's life like that from that vantage point? Because I didn't, are they alone? Do they live alone? Do they have family? Do they have children that they see, or are they widowed? Did they ever marry? What's the story? What's the journey there? And it really got me, because I thought that you really need to be okay with being you.
Right.
and 100% on your own, because at some point that is going to be me. Whether I'm in a relationship or not,
Right.
doesn't really matter. You know, my child one day will grow up and have his own family and his own things. And I want that for him. But it also means that I have to be okay with being me. And everyone has to be okay with being themselves.
That, yeah, and those are really wise words. It is so true, because you never know. For me, it's like I've learned to really enjoy my single life, right? When I got my freedom back, when I ended up getting my divorce, because I actually filed for my divorce out here in Denver, and so they give you, I think it was 90 days for reconciliation and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, oh, hurry up and get over 90 days, right? And when it was, I went into that courtroom over in Golden. I was living in Jefferson County, and I walked into that judge's chambers, and he says, okay, is there any, reconciliation? No, right? He said, is there anything in this divorce decree you want to add? I said, yes. He goes, what is it? I said, I want my maiden name back. I want my real last name back, right? Because again, it's surprising how much that is your identity. For me, it was all my identity. And so he asked me, okay, what's your last name? How do you spell it? He wrote it out, looked at it. Yep, that's exactly right. He signed it. He gave me that decree. And to this day, I can see myself walking out of that courtroom, going down the steps, and with every step down I went, the lighter and more free I felt. When I hit that bottom and walked to my car, it was like I was standing on top of the mountain just screaming, I'm free! That was the relief. That moment was my identity. Oh my God, I have me back, right?
Well, it's interesting, and I can identify with so much of that too. But I also reflect on this. It's like we choose to give that up the day that we get married, because no one can force that on you.
No,
that's a choice that you made. It's a choice that I made.
Exactly.
And it was. I don't know that I would say that I actively made it. Probably I did. Only I don't think I admit that to myself. But yeah, I did. I chose to relinquish my own inner knowing and my own inner being. Right? He didn't do that.
No,
I did.
And when I look back at the me that I thought I was or knew me to be prior to losing the identity, if I would have continued on that path, who the hell knows where I would have been? I'd have probably been dead by now. But I'm still pretty much a daredevil or whatever. But at the same time, going through that period of time and coming out the other side has put me right here today sharing this show with you to help you share your story, to impact someone else's life, to say, yes, even in today's world, you can find you. And wow, finding you is like really an awareness for all of 2020. I mean, for years, for decades, they've been talking about the awakening, the awakening, the awakening, right? For me, this is like, wow, this is a global experience. This isn't just something that happened in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Or in the United States.
Right.
This is global, and to be able to pull off an event like that, whoo, that took a lot of years of working. It didn't just click and happen overnight, right? And so when you look at that and that awakening, and what is the awakening? It is all about waking up to the spirit of who we all are, because we're all one, right? And to be able to understand who we are, what is our purpose for being here on this planet, and the lessons to learn, And it just keeps getting greater and greater and greater. And as you process your life and as you move from one segment of life to the next, to the next, to the next, it is a journey. And it's as much fun as you want to make it, or as much unfun as you want to make it. And I hear so much all the time, and I'm sure, coming into your coaching aspect and working with other people, and you probably hear yourself say this, it is not only who am I today, but who will I be tomorrow, right? But it's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen out there. If I do this, I don't know what's going to happen. And what if it's worse? It's like, oh, okay.
Well,
but what if it's better?
There's always the question of,
well, what if it's better?
What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen?
Right, and that's
at the end of the day, if you start to really lean into this trust and surrender, into
two big words.
To this point of really believing that there is something bigger, which you and I are, I believe, from what I can gather from this conversation, we're in a very similar space of there is energy beyond our knowing, right? I've seen the energy field. I don't see colors, but I see the energy field.
No, I see beyond that.
I know it exists.
Keep on going, because it's there, and you'll get everyone has that capability, right? And
you have to surrender to it, and also
you just accept it. It's like everyone has the ability to recognize the unseen. Metaphysics has always known what physics and science now has the equipment to prove.
Yes. That's beautifully said.
Right? Yeah. And so it's like, it's definitely made my world a lot simpler when I can explain the science behind what I've always known, right? And known as a child. But it took me until I moved to Denver in the early 80s and started meeting people at that time that could tell me what I did as far as, psychic and intuition, whatever you want to call it. So I had no clue. I just knew I did what I did because it helped me survive in my life, right? As a warrior, someone who was always fighting, always picked on. I was short. And you know what? I'm still short, but it's okay. Right. There was one day when it wasn't okay, right? But these are things that you learn. But looking back, and that's the neat thing about looking in the rearview mirror, not being attached to all that, but to saying, wow, had I not experienced that, I wouldn't be having the fun I'm doing today. Whoa, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have all this excitement going on. Wow, if I didn't, right? But when you're in it, not so much, right? Not so much. But know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not always a train, And so keep on going for that. Keep on going for it and going for it, because the faster you move that train through the tunnel, the faster you're going to get to the power and the excitement of what the truth of who you are really is. It's worth it. It's worth it. Right?
It is. It is. Even, and I'm, right now, I thought I was through that tunnel.
I know.
And I was in life for a long time. And a new tunnel showed up. And
That's right.
I'm in it.
Right. Yep.
I'm in it.
Yep.
And there's beauty in it, and there's fear in it, and there's all of it's in there. Yeah. But if I didn't have the fear, I don't know.
Well, the fear, when you learn when you understand energy, we talk about energy. We have a positive charge and a negative charge. We live in a world of duality, so we have to have that here on this planet.
We have to have polarity.
And all the negative is, and the positive is a charge. It's not a good or bad, it's not a right or wrong, right? It's a positive or a negative charge. Well, everything that's attached to fear, the frustrations and the anxieties and all that lower vibration runs on a negative charge. All the happy and the feel-goods and stuff run on a positive charge. But if you can take that negative charge of fear, or whatever is attached to it, when you can take that negative charge, and you place it underneath the positive charge, it will drive that positive charge to the outcome at full speed ahead. If you were to take that negative charge and put it on top of the positive, it's going to drive it down into the never-ending abyss. Here's your choice. Which way are you driving the train? This way or this way? It's your choice, right?
It's true.
It's your choice. So, it's fear can be your greatest power when you know how to use it. And there is nothing like fear other than fear itself. So, and it's created where? Fear is created between these 6 inches.
Yeah.
By a database of information that's distorted. Now, when you can move out of your head and you move into your heart, trigger the brain that's in the heart, and you trigger the spirit essence of who you are and the truth of who you are, because you're coming from the truth, not from the distorted thought processing of database of information and experiences.
Yep. Yep. Speak my language. Speak my language.
Jocelyn, you said you're going to write a book. What's the name of this book you're going to write?
So I'm going to actually pull up we just established the working title yesterday. I'm going to pull that up because I want to share it, because it just came across and it's perfect.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the book is called Break Up to Wake Up. And I have a subtitle that I'm looking for right now, and I can't find it. And of course, it doesn't, I guess I can't find it right at the moment. But what I am doing is actually partnering with, I'm the lead author, and I'm partnering with 12 men and women from around the world. In fact, we're in 4 continents. I've got authors from 4 different continents. And we're all going to be sharing our own journeys of a breakup to wake up.
Oh, that's awesome. There's so much collaboration going on with books now. I'm actually in a couple of them myself, which is going to be fun. I do have my other books out there myself, and which is a lot of fun too. So I'm all excited about that, because having a book is just, it's an accomplishment, but it also sets you aside from. But this is one of my books. It's called The Power Formula. Mm-hmm. Now, I wrote this book, and it was turning into an encyclopedia. It was so funny. And it was like, and this was my second book. And it's like, I'm never going to get this to an end, right? And then I woke up one morning and Spirit says, Beverly, you're writing a book, not an encyclopedia. What are you doing? You're trying to put everything you've learned in all this time in one book? Are you serious? Oh yeah, no kidding. In a week I had it all dissected and put apart and ready to go. But I did not have this name. I had so many different names of this book. And when the Power Formula Heart-Mind Connection, that's why you're seeing this, right? Yep. Came into being was when I had already taken all the guts of it, put it into the format that was getting ready to send, to the printer without a cover, right? All of a sudden, it was there. It's like, oh, wow, the Power Formula, Heart-Mind Connection. Okay. Oh, well, now I need to find an artist. I went to Fiverr.
Uh-huh.
And I had several, I think there was 3 or 4 artists. And this one came across. It came across in yellow. And it's like, not so much. We need to get into the aquas, right? And so we did. And I purchased it. Boom. It went on the book and the book went out, right?
Yep.
So, and then I did another book that followed, which was, Which Side of the Fence Are You On? And it's all about the world of duality.
Oh, wow.
Because what do we live in? A world of duality. Because so which side of the fence are you on? You can't be on both sides of that fence at the same time.
No.
It doesn't matter how hard you try. You can put 1 foot over here and 1 foot over here. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. But you know what? You can't experience both at the same time. You might flop back and forth a billion miles an hour, but you know what? You can only have that experience. You can't be happy and sad at the same time. If you're happy, you're happy. And when you're sad, you're sad. But you can't have them both.
No.
Pick your poison. Pick your taste.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And you do have choice. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And
every single day. And every single moment. I'm going to go a little further.
Every moment.
Every single day.
Every thought that you have a choice to keep thinking of it or changing it. Mm-hmm. Right? And in all these millions of thoughts we have every day, and we have similar ones continuously every day, when you begin to recognize you're having a thought, and if it's not a healthy thought, that's really going to make it productive. That's going to make you that better you today. Guess what? Then change it. Just go to the opposite.
I had nothing changes if nothing changes. That's just what it is.
Okay. But you know what? Change is going to happen with or without you.
Agreed.
Right?
I don't disagree with you on that. And this is like...
Yeah. But what's your personal change?
I had this memory that came through just recently. But I go back to my 20s, and I had a roommate for a period of time, and she went to college not too far from where we were living, and a number of her college friends all lived in the same town. And one of her friends, and we were 22, 23, early 20s. One of her college friends, she was already married at that point, looked around this room, and I was the outsider. I was not part of this group, but I was invited to this event. She looked around this room. She's like, I don't ever need any more friends. I have everything I need right here, right now.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, oh my God, this is why I don't like you. That's awful. But I knew it. I was like, out of the group of, out of this little group of girls, she was the one I was like most like tenuous with, and I didn't know why. And then I finally got it. I was like, she thinks her world is perfect right here, right now. And hey, maybe it is, but you're 23. Life is just getting started. The amount of experiences we have ahead of us is vastly larger than what we've done already. And so for you to say this is it.
Whoa. You talk about putting limitations on, right?
Well, yeah, and it was the same thing with my freshman year roommate in college. She had grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and that was the life. That's the life she knew. And she, by sophomore year, was putting balls under her shirt to know what it was like to be pregnant at like 19.
Oh my gosh!
And that just didn't resonate with me in any way. And I was like, well, maybe if I have a kid one day, that'll be a thing. But it's, my life is I know my life is just on a different trajectory. Right. So, yeah.
That kind of
well before my awakening.
That takes me back into my high school years, and every year that you have your class reunions, right? And I think the last one I went to was either 40th or 45th. So let's put it this way: I graduated in '68. Okay, that was a long time ago, right? And going back then, and my life, had really changed. I mean, I've been all around the world and everything else, And going back, there were several kids. I mean, quite a few actually. There was 103 of us in my graduating class. And I think there was 3 or 4 that had passed away at that last reunion that I had gone to. But I'm looking at quite a few of the kids. I want to say probably at least 20 of them who have never left that little town. that little community that they grew up in. Still there. Still living the same life. You know, and I'm observing this and I'm thinking, wow. They look identically to the day they graduated. Same hairdo, same clothing style, same mannerisms, everything. It's like, whoa, fast go backwards to 1968. And there they are. Identical. Oh, it like...
And it's,
wow.
it's a choice, right? We have a choice of how we're going to show up in our world.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with friends of mine earlier this year. I think it was probably April, when things started to lift enough that we were able to be around people. And then we were just talking about the contrast. Now, you know, my one girlfriend, it was a girlfriend and her husband, she's on their second marriage. And we were talking about two different people in our life and the experiences that they have had, and the contrast of the two. This one who has been married and gets up and does the same routine every day and has done so for 20 years. And this other one who's had these highs and lows, right? And these extremes of beauty and love and extremes of depression and you know, working through and which life, if we were to choose, which life do we want? And all three of us were like, we'd rather have the highs and the lows because we know what it feels like to have both than living in this treadmill of having sort of this dull existence. Those are my words.
Right. Well, you know, and again, that's our interpretation of what is presented, and it's like, whoa, that's definitely not me, right? And so I mean, it is an eye opener as time goes by, shall we say, right? And when you look back at that, I mean, I can look back on my life and say, you know what? There's not a damn thing that I regret in any avenue of my life, right? And I am going to continue to live it to its fullest from this point forward. And no one is going to stop this little girl from doing what she wants to do. I don't care. That little rebel is still here, you know, in different perspectives. And so don't tell me what I have to do in 2020. Because guess what? It ain't happening. It ain't happening. Right?
Well, we have, so, I mean, I always said to myself that my life was going to be a kaleidoscope of color. I've said that for as long as I can remember.
Right. You know,
I didn't know what that meant. I don't want to.
You know, it's going to mean something different all along your journey. All along the journey, right? Because it continues to grow with you and expand. And the more you expand, the more it expands. You know, and I just tell everybody, you know what? I'll do anything once. And if I like it and had a good time, I'll do it again. And if I still like it, I'll continue to do it until I don't like it anymore, right?
Right.
But I will give it at least a one-time shot, you know?
Right.
First time I jumped out of an airplane, I was all excited, right? It's like, okay, I'm jumping out of an airplane. I couldn't wait because I always wanted to do it. It was back in the 80s. And I was in the automotive industry. And one of my customers in the body shop down there in Colorado Springs, actually, said, hey, a bunch of us are going to get together and we're going to go up to Fort Collins and we're going to jump out of a plane. Do you want to go? And I said, well, not only yes, but hell yeah, right? Yeah. And so we did, right? And, well, guess what? I did it more than once. I did it more than twice. You know, so it was like, wow. It was an experience that was like awesome.
Yeah, that's how I felt the first time I did mine too.
Yeah.
I've only done it once though.
I did it to point, and I did my AFF, which is all by myself because I was doing tandem before. You know, you are all by yourself out there, and you just go. I mean, it was just, it's freeing. It really is freeing, right? And you know, and you don't feel like you're falling until that last 500 feet. All of a sudden, the ground's like whoop coming to your face, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it was pretty interesting. So, oh my goodness, Jocelyn, this has been a treat. You know.
I know. What a joy. This has been such a joyous, like such an easy flow. And you said that beforehand. You know, like it just goes with what, and that's how I record my show too.
That's
Whatever's
awesome.
meant to show
That's
comes out.
awesome. If people want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
Yeah, a couple ways. So I am most predominantly found on Facebook at jocelyn.bellows24. You can find information about my podcast. I do post my podcast on my Facebook page as well, but
Okay.
podcast can be found anywhere podcast can be found under What's Your Leave. I do post it on anchor.fm and Instagram also at What's Your Leave. And I have a couple of things coming up. We kind of tapped on the book. The book is coming out this winter. It's called Break Up to Wake Up. And it's, I found it and now it's already gone. Hold on. I'm going to find it again because I have.
Oh, the tagline?
Yes. Break Up to Wake Up, shifting beyond the now.
Ooh, that's great. Because, I just got chills. It is, because it is all about shifting beyond the now. Because the now is always a different moment that keeps on going, forward.
Yep.
But that's beautiful.
And we're going to be sharing stories of breaking up with faith, with religion, with addiction. With me, my story will be my journey through relationship. But what was that point where you got to the lowest of low and said, I'm not doing this anymore. And waking up to knowing the abundance that you have access to and have always had access to. I also have a workshop coming up starting on the 14th. I'm partnering, and I think we're Beata.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Beata and I are teaming up, and we are putting together a 3-part workshop starting on the 14th.
Nice.
Values, vulnerability, and vision, leaping from limitation to liberation.
Yeah. So you know Alex too, then? Yeah.
Agresta?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sure do. In fact, we were messaging
man,
last
you
night.
know what? We're all just going to have to get together.
We're all in this little space together.
Yeah, I told Beata, we should meet in, I can't think of the little...
Springs.
The one just when you're headed...
Manitou?
No, closer to town. The first one when you leave town here. Yeah. Okay. It's right there on 25 when you leave Highlands Ranch. It's the first one you come to.
Castle Rock? No.
Castle Rock. Yeah.
Okay.
Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Because that would be a good meeting point, so because I'm coming out of Brighton, just come straight down. So if we all got together, that would be great. Then we could all do a show. We'll do a show while we're all together.
Let's do a Facebook Live. We'll make it happen.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So for right now, we are going to say it's time to go out there and do what? Be that best you that you can be, because Jocelyn and I are going to be the best we that we can be. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so glad we found this time. We finally created this space.
We finally created the space, and that's what it's all about, is creating your space. Bye for now. See you all on another show.